All right, coming up next, I'm joined by Katelyn, Tocci, and Alex Sear, and we unpack probably the biggest rivalry in athletics in generations. These two guys, Josh Kerr and Jakob Ingrebrestin, they don't like each other. They're super public about it. We talk about who's the villain, who's the good guy here, if there is a good guy or if they're both villains, why this is such a delicious story, and why it's kind of important for running and why you should care, even if you don't care about track and field. This is something that is worth knowing about. Everyone's going to be talking about it in the Olympics this summer. It's going to be probably one of the most hyped events in the Olympics this summer, the 1500 meter final and the throwdown between these two guys. So we share our thoughts on that. Then we roll right into what I'm calling Gelgate. It's this controversy in the trail running world, in the ultra trail running world, around a emergent boutique brand called Spring Energy. It's been accused of producing a fraudulent gel that just like totally underdelivered, like less than half of what it claims. And we unpack what's going on with that and why I think it's more than just about a crappy gel, why it's about the state of the sport, the state of the industry. It's about influencers. It's about whether we like to hate and hate to love influencers, pulling in that aspect of this story. And it's a really interesting one. So we delve into that. And then finally, we talk about the heat. You know, June, summertime's right around the corner. We discuss how we approach training in the heat and some tips on how to survive the heat as well. Katelyn, she lives in Costa Rica. She's battling the heat 12 months of the year. So we pick her brain on that. All right, let's get into the show. All right, I'm here with Alex and Katelyn. Alex, first let's turn to you. There's something highly unusual that's going on in the track world in the last couple of years, and it's hit a fever pitch right now. And that is two world-beating athletes at the peak of their powers going into an Olympic Games, and they absolutely fucking hate each other. Yeah, I'm going to start swearing here. And it's amazing. And it's not something that we've seen. I mean, it's not something I've seen. It's in all the years that I've covered track and field, two athletes that have been this vocal about their disdain for each other. Alex, explain to us Josh Kerr and Jakob Ingrebrestin, who they are and why they're at odds with each other.
So you know what's crazy is I think the biggest consistent headline in the last couple months has been that beef between Jakob Ingrebrestin, the Norwegian runner, and Josh Kerr, the Scottish runner. And these are things that we see in all the other sports very normally. Basketball, football, even see this in rap. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but in running, it's the biggest headline because we're so not used to it. So for someone who hasn't been following this beef, let me break it down a little bit. Okay. I think any good beef has the protagonist and the antagonist. And in this case, I'm not sure who is who, but you do have a poster boy and an underdog, I think. And even that is becoming hard to figure out. So it all started with the poster boy being Jakob Ingrebrestin. So Norwegian runner, 1500 meter, 5K specialist, won the Olympics in Tokyo at the age of 20 and seemed unbeatable for a few years. Underdog, Josh Kerr, who was around that time, I'd call him like around that time, just a bit before, a good collegiate runner who just became better and better and better. And now both of them are among the best milers in the world. They're getting close to the world records, and in any given race, they're likely to be 1-2 or 1-2-3. So let's start with Ingrebrestin. Okay, he's from the Ingrebrestin family, three brothers, coached by their father Geert. There is a lot of there are videos and articles about this, about how these athletes were coached from the very beginning since they were kids, and it's actually wild. I would actually really recommend the YouTube channel. You'll see a lot of things. Your mind will be blown quite a few different ways. He's been the favorite for a while. I think the beef began when Jakob Ingrebrestin lost a race to Josh Kerr, which was uncharacteristic of him. Ingrebrestin said he was sick. This was back a few years ago. And Josh Kerr, Ingebrigtsen says that had he not been sick, he would have beaten him. Josh Kerr is just the next guy.
You can be disrespectful to me, that's fine. I still have the World Championship gold medal, and I'm going to be a world champion for the next 2 years regardless of his comments. Obviously, don't love disrespectful comments, and, I've worked hard to get into this position, and I beat him on the day. But, if that's the kind of route he wants to go down, that's fine with me.
So Kerr went on to throw shots at Jakob for dodging certain races, having a high ego, saying things like, this is the famous quote that made its way in Let's Run thread. It's, you must be surrounded by so many yes men that you don't realize that you have weaknesses. And then around that time, Kerr begins to close in on Jakob's times. Kerr sets the British 2-mile record, 8 flat, to which Ingebrigtsen says, if I was in that race, I probably would have beaten him blindfolded. Around the next Olympics, Ingebrigtsen says, if I don't get injured and if I don't get sick, I think it's going to be a walk in the park. This is about Paris. The latest chapter, let's say, was at the Prefontaine Classic a couple weeks ago, where both were racing the mile, and Kerr actually beat him. So before the race, Kerr goes, I'm not here to settle tension. I'm here to run a fantastic mile that will go down for centuries. His time is 3:45, beat Ingebrigtsen, and now both of them are getting close to the Olympics. So this is probably the biggest beef in terms of animosity that we've seen in running. Like, you look at, say, the last 10, 20, 30 years, we've seen rivalries, but no beef. If you follow competitive running, you can think of Haile Gebrselassie versus Paul Turgat, Kenenisa Bekele and Eliud Kipchoge, maybe more recently, as they both have reverence for each other, but there's no real animosity there. On the women's side, Sifan Hassan versus basically everyone, from Faith Kipyegon to Letesenbet Gide. But again, there's no trash talking. So this is new for running, I guess. And fans are latching onto it like anything, because I think they're craving it, right? Every sport has its code. When it comes to golf, we're very respectful. We don't have many beefs in golf. When it comes to soccer, everyone is beefing, players, fans. Running has been way closer to golf. And I think fans have been missing out on, hearing what athletes actually think. So now all of a sudden the 1500 in the Olympic is going to be the most hotly contested event, because I don't think any other race is coming with this much beef.
Yeah, this is something that you normally anticipate from something like 100-meter final, when you're dealing with these massive egos, huge world stage, a lot on the line. But in this case, it's the 1500, which is, you're right. It's sort of more like, historically, it's given more kind of PGA vibes than heavyweight boxing match vibes. And yeah, these guys really don't like each other. I think what's cool about this as well is this is also coming at a time going into the Paris Olympics where there's been a little bit of added interest in track, and the streamers are getting involved. So the Ingebrigtsens have a docu-series coming out on Amazon Prime, presumably right before the Olympics drop. And I'm really interested to watch that. I'll be like, insert, thriller popcorn emoji. I'll be like devouring that docu-series in the hope that Jakob says something really dickish, as he often does, about Josh Kerr in the series. And then we can immediately turn our focus to Kerr on social media and see how he responds. Because obviously Kerr is not going to be getting the same sort of treatment, because he's not quite the celebrity yet that Ingebrigtsen and that he and his brothers are. So this is fantastic stuff. This is this is the drama I come for. Sports are, we forget sometimes, sports are not just competition, they're also entertainment, right? And this is melodrama. This is a soap opera. This is great. This is who do you guys think the villain is here, and who do you think the good guy is here? It's kind of it's like, as you alluded to off the top, Alex, it's sort of tough to pick who the real villain is here. I mean, Ingebrigtsen doesn't help himself, because he just looks like a villain from a Hollywood movie. He looks like a bad guy in Raiders of the Lost Ark, so he's sort of easy to paint as the bad guy. And he also just says these things where you're just like, Like there's a super cut of him on YouTube saying like D-bag things left and right for like 18 minutes. And it's just like, he's just like, you know, no one can, the stuff like no one can beat me. And like, even at Prefontaine Classic, I noticed in the mixed zone, the area where the athletes are corralled to speak to the media afterwards, Ingrebrestin starts answering questions about his race tactics. And he's like, and one of the journalists is asking him what I think the journalist thought was going to be a tough question about how, like, you know, are you going to change your tactics? You've done the same thing now for the last couple of years. And now you're kind of alluding to like, now you're starting to get beat. And are you going to have to alter your tactics? And Ingrebrestin was just like, he was so like, he looked at the guy like, you're a fucking idiot, man. And he looked at him and he was like, I race 20 times and I win 18 times out of 20 with the same tactic. Would you change your tactic if you had an 18 out of 20 success rate? And the journalist was just like, I guess not. And he's like, exactly. So why would I change? And it's just like, oh,
seems like
man.
It was an innocent question.
I know, exactly. I was just
poor
like,
guy.
I was horrified. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a fair question as well.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Anyway, I guess I didn't let you guys answer. Who do you like in all this? Who are we rooting for in the Paris Olympics? We're going to get, presumably both these guys make the final, which they probably will because they're the best in the world. Who are we cheering for? Are we cheering for either of them or are we cheering for somebody else? Like, yeah.
I'm going to be honest, going back and forth, I don't know. I mean, I'm not as into this world as you guys are, but I did watch some of the interviews yesterday and just kind of with I think the attitudes and what I'm hearing from you guys, and I kind of am Team Kerr.
Team Kerr based on vibes. Okay.
Based on vibes, because I don't know.
I think you can make a case for both being the villain. That's why my pick for the Olympics, I'm going not so far off the map. And I'm going to pick Yared Nuguse. So he's the third.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to go with
component.
that guy. Yeah.
Really? Well, it's a 2-person beef, but it's a 3-person competition.
Yeah.
So the part that people don't look at and don't realize is that a split second behind Kerr and Ingrebrestin at every race is this American runner who's just out of college, who seems to not care at all and be not interested whatsoever in any type of beef. Well, the word on the street is that his hobby outside of running is caring for turtles. He's a peaceful
I like him.
guy.
Okay.
Yeah, and
So good.
I think what might happen is if Ingrebrestin and Kerr wear themselves down for months, focus too much on each other, this might just pave a good path for Nuguse, who's very much on his way up. He's improving every year. Of course, Kenya and Ethiopia always churn out a couple 328, 329, 1500 meter runners every year. The win could eventually go to someone else. I think we automatically think that it's going to be contested between these two because they're the two who are most present in the media. And it might be. They're incredibly talented runners. And a part of me wants to see the two of them, cruise down that home stretch and battle it out, try to find a winner and continue this beef, right? Because it gets eyes to the sport. But, Nuguse has less on his mind, I would imagine, before the race. And if I had to pick a villain between the two of them, I think Ingrebreksen's the villain. At one point, there was a culture around Ingrebrestin as the next one. He withstood the tough training that his dad subjected him to. He learned from his two brothers. He was just a quiet kid, working hard, winning crazy races. And now I think that's faded because of these comments and because he's shown a cocky side. Mm-hmm. And also, Kerr is an underdog. When you look at, the last 2 years, Kerr had to build himself up to come to Ingrebreksen's level and not vice versa. So I think Ingrebrestin is going to enter these Olympics coming from a far different, or looking through them with a different lens than last time. Because last time I think he couldn't lose and he was a favorite because he was so young. Now the act is a little bit tired. And I think Kerr's gained a fan base and Nuguse is gaining a fan base too.
All right, we'll put a pin on that. I'm sure we're going to revisit this this beef, this rivalry, at some point in July, like right before the 1,500 meter events go off. I'm super excited for it. I'm excited for it. We're so excited about it. We're talking about it in the end of May. All right, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back, and I'm going to do my very best to unpack something that I'm going to term Gelgate. We'll be right back. All right, and we're back. Gelgate. I'm calling it Gelgate because anything that's controversial, that's a scandal of some kind, that alludes to a potential conspiracy gets gate thrown at the end of it. And like, I don't know, it's smooth. Gelgate. Basically what's going on here is this. And there is a company called Spring Energy, sort of this boutique energy company based in San Francisco that's had a pretty meteoric rise in the last couple of years. It's still quite small in the grand scheme of things. It's no Goo or Morton or whatever. Their whole conceit, though, is that they are producing gels that are easier on your tummy, don't cause GI issues, and they're all natural. It's whole food based, and that somehow with some of their products they've jammed in a huge amount of carbohydrates and overall calories into a very small pouch, a very small serving size. So that it got everyone excited, particularly, Katelyn, ultra runners, because when you think about running like 100K, 100 miles, your nutrition plan becomes like a make or break thing. It's a big part of the performance, certainly with marathon runners as well. I mean, we've seen the rise of Morton in the last 6 or 7 years, and that was around this idea that if you get your fueling right, you're going to have a great deal of success. So what happened here was this. The last couple of months, particularly on Reddit, but other social media platforms as well, ultra runners in particular started murmuring about this one particular gel called Awesome Sauce, which I think is a really stupid name, but whatever. Awesome Sauce, that these kind of like up and coming influencer, coach, celebrities, this husband and wife couple had been pushing pretty heavily, and other people like Sage Canaday, who's kind of a known ultra influencer athlete guy. He's sponsored by Spring as well, so he was pushing this product. And a lot of people started buying it because it claimed to have 180 calories per gel and 45 grams as well, which is a lot, right? And so ultra runners started using it, but many started reporting like they just didn't feel good. They were bonking really hard in races, falling apart, and they would have an empty feeling even after consuming like multiple gels. They just didn't feel like they were working. So some runners started investigating this, started experimenting, started doing little like ad hoc home lab tests. And there was like rumors floating around that the gels weren't all that they were marketing themselves as being. So in comes this notable coach and podcaster. He's pretty prominent on Instagram in particular, named Jason Koop, this American guy, who's like a very like science-based, no bullshit guy, right? So he comes in, he's like, I think he sort of smelled a rat and was suspicious in the onset from what the vibe he's given off in the reels is like that he put out the last couple of days suggests that he's sort of like thought there's something was up with this product all along.
Spring's Awesome Sauce is not all that it is cracked up to be, and I am pissed.
So he sent off a whole bunch of the gels to an independent third-party lab in Washington to have them analyzed for their nutritional content, just as you would if you own the company, right? Like you're just like, I need to know on the whole sort of what the numbers are for my product. Sent it off, got the results back, put out a string of reels on Instagram that unpack this whole fiasco. Turns out they have less than half the carbohydrate and overall calorie count than what they're advertising. It was 75 calories and 18 carbs. That's in contrast to 180 and 45. I mean, it's a massive difference, right?
Yeah, it's nothing.
And then he excoriated the brand and also this husband and wife coaching team, Megan and David Roche, who run a private coaching company called Swap Adventure Team, kind of a weird name. And they've really risen in the last couple of years. They've got quite a few known athletes in their orbit, like people like John Kelly, the guy who finished the Barkley marathons a few times now, is kind of like a bit of an ultra legend in certain circles. I mean, that's somebody you really want kind of fronting what you're doing, because, you know, he's the guy who can survive doing the Barkley multiple times. And they've got also this kind of like super positive vibes thing going on with what they do. And I think that Coop sort of felt like this couple really got behind this gel. They really pumped it at first. They kind of insinuated that they were behind developing the gel or the concept of the gel. And now subsequently what's happening is this couple is sort of taking a step back and they're saying, oh, we were never formally involved with this. We never really developed this. And in fact, we never even actually took the gel. We never used the gel ourselves, and their athletes don't use the gel. So it's kind of like trying to wash your hands of this whole scenario. But what's happening now is the company Spring Energy released a statement basically saying kind of two things at the same time. They're saying the gels in question that were tested may have been part of a lot or a group of gels that maybe had some QA issues or were inconsistent in some way, and that might explain it. And then they also sort of the bad batch.
Yeah, the bad batch.
The batch with the less stuff in it. And the second thing they said is like that they think that maybe they're going to revisit their formulas. So it's kind of like this was just a one-off bad batch / maybe we should look at how we're making things. So I think, guys, this is a bigger story than beyond just like some gels that were not what they claimed they were. I think that this is a bigger issue in the sport when you think about a product making a claim and then not delivering on that claim. I mean, that's fraudulent. That's libel. That's very dangerous to do. Like, think about when you're wearing a pair of like running shoes, a pair of super shoes is an example. You know, if a company comes out with a pair of $400 super shoes that they claim are going to give you like a 4% benefit, and everyone's running in them, and everyone's saying like, I'm not running a PR. I felt like crap in the second half of the race. I don't know what's going on with this shoe. I mean, and then if you discover like, well, actually it's bad science and the claims are completely bunk. I mean, that would be a really big issue, right? So there's that. And then there's also something else going on. I wanted to pick your brains about this. There's obviously something going on between Coop and his sort of like his vibe, his sort of public facing running personality, and the Roches, Sage Kennedy, people like that. There seems to be like is there a running influencer civil war brewing here?
Maybe, I don't know.
You know what I mean? Like I think there's like a lot of influencers, and we were talking about this in the previous segment, Alex, about in running how there's this real reluctance to have an opinion and to sort of avoid controversy and to skirt any sort of conflict or negative vibes, and to keep things like kind of positive to a degree that's like fake positive at times. And I get this vibe from kind of the one camp here with the Spring Energy folks, with the Roches as coaches and as people. And then I get the sense that this guy Coop is sort of like calling bullshit on all of this and just being a little bit like, you know, if you're going to pump up a product, you got to own the product, and also don't hide behind everything being like just good times all the time.
I've been noticing a movement, not just recently, but in, say, the last 5-10 years, inside of running, that depicts running as an inclusive thing, a fun thing, something that you do essentially to build community. I'm not disparaging that. I think finding hobbies to build community is a good thing. The issue, I think, is when someone jumps into running with only that in mind and doesn't take into account the fact that, like, also, if you start running and training, this is a very hard thing that you're doing. And you need to lean into the hardness of it to really, well, this is where my opinion falls. And this is the best way to do it is to challenge that hard part. But whether or not, if you challenge the hard part, you need to understand that there's a science that goes to it. I know there's a gentleman right now who's running through Canada. He's running across Canada.
Okay.
And it's an incredible feat, right? It's a Terry Fox-esque thing. He actually just passed the point where Terry Fox unfortunately stopped, Thunder Bay. He's something like 40 or 50 days in, and he's running 75 kilometers every day.
Wow.
Now, that's an incredible feat. But also, I would like him to publicize more what he does on the daily to make sure that he can keep doing that. Because he's not running across Canada on vibes alone.
Yeah.
And you can't run an ultra on vibes alone. And you shouldn't finish a marathon on vibes alone. If you're doing it for the fun, for the community, for the stunts, that's cool. But you also need to back it up because this is hard stuff. So, I don't know. I don't do ultras. I think that if I were to do ultras, I would hope that I would inform myself and get the right gels, but also maybe not. Like, why would I know that this, what's it called? I forget.
Awesome sauce.
How could I forget that?
Come
I
on,
would know
Alex.
that awesome sauce isn't good. I think it's irresponsible on their part. And at worst, my most pessimistic take is that they were preying on this idea of, we're just running for fun. We're trying to build community and we're going to buy whatever's out there because it's likely safe. And a lot of people suffered for it. So yeah, I think that's awful.
Katelyn, do you run your ultras on vibes? Is it all vibes?
I do not. It's not vibes. And I think I've mentioned in one of the previous podcasts, like that, like our running club saying is run for fun. However, I'm very competitive. I know that maybe earlier in my running career, I'd say, oh no, I'm not that competitive. I just like to have fun. And I do like to have fun, but I am very competitive. And there's a huge part to that as well. And yeah, whenever I've also been approached, I feel like when you're approached with a product or people want help with a product, I've always been really upfront with any of the brands. And I've said, I need to try it first. I need to use it for a few months. I need to use it in a race, and then I'll let you know if it's something that I can help you out with. And that's always been kind of like the rule with me. I've never, someone's, come up to me and say, well, can you use this? And can you post about this? And well, I can't unless I try it out, unless I see if I really like it. And if I really like it and it's working for me, I'd be happy to help you out, like in any way that I can. But I'm a really firm believer in, like what Alex is saying, you're not just going to put your faith in something because it says that it works. You've got to make sure it works for you and be 100% sure that it works for you. And then, and then stand behind that product. At least that's the way that I've always kind of approached those situations.
And what do you guys think about like an influencer's responsibility to their followers, to their community, to the running community at large? Like if you're an influencer / athlete, and you're approached by the good people at Spring Energy to front their product, and they send you a bunch of free product, of course, and maybe they pay you some money, and there's a contract where you have to go and promote the brand and talk about it and do a YouTube video and whatever. But what if that product is subpar? Or what if you don't really use the product that much because you kind of know it's not really that great, but you still front it because you're getting paid some money, or because you want to be a quote unquote sponsored athlete, which I think is going on here a lot in certain quarters of running. It's definitely in the ultra trail world, like where there's like this desire to be sponsored in some way, even if sponsored means you're not actually getting paid any cash. What's the responsibility of an influencer in that regard, especially when you come into the situation where it's like scientifically verified that at least some of this product is just fake or phony or subpar? Like, is it on Sage Canada because he was going around saying everyone should be taking awesome sauce? It's awesome. And then it's like, well, it's actually not that awesome, Sage. And is he allowed to retract and say like, hey, just an athlete. I don't have any responsibility to what's actually in this stuff. Don't shoot the messenger.
I think he can claim to not know. I mean, why would he know? They don't take athletes through the lab and show them how it's made necessarily. I think,
but they do.
Did they?
They did. So if you go, I don't know if it's still up there, but if you go to the Spring Energy homepage, they have this video with like literally all of their influencers and athletes getting a tour of the production facility. So they do.
Were they lied to?
But they were perhaps lied to,
though?
Either lied to or perhaps, like, in fairness to Spring Energy, maybe their just quality assurance was non-existent. And they were just like, at the beginning we did some rough math and we were jamming all these different fruits and whatever into this paste, into this sauce. And then basic math suggested it was this many calories. And we never tested it after that. Or we don't do spot testing, so... But yeah, I don't know. It's a good question.
I have a hard time. Yeah, I have a hard time thinking that there was a moment when Spring Energy came to Sage Canada and said, "Hey, listen, by the way, this thing is bullshit." Like, I don't think that would happen, because why would he? Why would he use it then?
Yeah,
that totally didn't happen. I don't think. To your question, I think there's only one way to do it. I think now that we're 10 years into this influencer movement, we've had influencers for 10 years now. People are understanding. And their viewers, not influencers, but viewers, are becoming good at pinpointing which influencers are only in it for the money, because they'll likely rep a bunch of weird stuff, and a lot of it, a quantity of stuff. And then eventually these influencers fall by the wayside. I've met a few influencers, and I'm starting to realize the good ones actually believe in the product that they're talking about, because that will ensure their longevity too. It's also good for them in the long term to only advertise products that they believe in. So if they're worth their salt and they know what they're doing, they're not going to peddle crap. But some influencers do, because they haven't figured that out yet.
So if you see an influencer that like kind of looks like a NASCAR, it's just, the person's got like their Instagram profile is like 30 different shitty products.
It's a red flag.
Question mark. Last thought I have on this, Katelyn, before we move on to the next topic is, do you think that, because you're deeply entrenched in the ultra trail world, do you think that there's a little bit of an existential crisis going on right now in the ultra trail world that might be kind of percolating or sort of forcing an issue like this, where there are a lot of athletes who really want this to be their profession and they want it to be professionalized, and they see these sorts of brands and any sort of sponsorship, even if it's like a no money sponsorship, is at least kind of creating this sense that they're being taken seriously and that it's a professional realm. Is that an issue that's going on right now in the ultra trail community?
Yeah, I kind of only thought it was an issue down where but now listening to this, I'm feeling like it's happening all over. Because I do see it here as well with the ultra runners that we have here in Costa Rica or, in Central America. And now I guess we're seeing it all over. But yeah, I kind of feel like maybe the athletes will feel as though they're being taken a little more seriously. And to be honest, at least here, you can't be an ultra trail athlete and that be your job 100%. I mean, I don't know anyone where I am who's getting paid to be an ultra athlete. And I think that maybe that's the goal. I mean, it would be awesome if there were also ultra trail athletes who were paid athletes like other athletes around the world in different disciplines. But I feel like we're not quite there yet. So perhaps people are taking on those sponsorships because it makes them seem more professional. And of course, I mean, every little bit helps. If you have someone that is taking care of your running shoes and your clothes and your nutrition and your hydration and your gym membership and your coach, and that's a lot of money that you'll save per month if you don't have to pay that. But I just do always feel like I'm always going to say, I just hope that people who are using the products really stand by the products, and they're using the products because they want to and because they think that it's something that's going to benefit other runners and that it works for them. But yeah, I absolutely do see that's something that's going on for sure.
All right, we'll leave it at that for now. I feel like that this is also a subject that is not yet seen its full resolution. And I believe our colleague Jesse, our news editor, is going to be speaking with Jason Koop on Friday. So tomorrow, we're recording this on Thursday afternoon. She's going to be speaking with Jason Koop, and we'll make sure that we either slot that into a upcoming episode of the podcast or just get it out there on the site right away. We'll probably do both. So, all right. And this is like a little tease for a future pod idea, guys, but I kind of want to get into talking about why we hate to love and love to hate influencers, but we'll leave that for another day. It's a whole subject. That's like 15 minutes right there. So we'll pause it for now and we'll revisit that at a later time. Okay. We'll take one more break. And then after that, we'll pick Katelyn's brain about all things heat. We'll be right back. All right, and we're back. Last topic of the day. Katelyn, I'm going to turn to you. You are the queen of the heat. You are constantly being pulverized by hot, humid conditions because you are a American living in Costa Rica. I've done some running in Costa Rica. It's impossible at the best of times. So I feel like you're the perfect person to chat about with this. We're just going to throw a bunch of heat related questions at you. The timing is right. We're heading into June. It's about to get quite warm in many parts of the world. First things first, heat and humidity, like how does it affect your running? Does it actually like it affects it like the experience of running, but does it actually affect like performance and day-to-day running and how you should be running easy and that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, as Michael said, summer is coming for some people in the world, but for people like me who have got to run in the heat and humidity all the time. So I felt like this was absolutely the most perfect topic for me. Yes, heat and humidity. Heat's tough on its own, but with humidity, it just makes it a whole lot worse. It makes it the real feel, as they say, right, on the weather forecast. The real feel is always worse. And with the heat and humidity, you're going to not only feel a dip in your performance, you'll feel an elevated heart rate. Your rate of perceived exertion will be way up there. And it's going to make a pretty big difference. Like I have noticed that when running in the heat, my heart rate can fluctuate 12, 15 beats a minute, depending on, the heat and the humidity, checking the heat index and all that. So, and there's some science behind it saying everyone's heart rate's going to be different and you're going to get affected in different ways. But I can say that I have really noticed mine, like, no, here with this pace, I should be in, the 150 range. And I feel like I'm at 162. Like what's going on with me? Like I'm really getting out of the zone, to think of it like that. So yeah, of course it's going to affect your performance and it can get frustrating at times. And for me, I feel like it's been frustrating because when I'm trying to train something pace related and road related and not something in the mountains, I feel like it really is tricky for me to hit those paces that I have tried to figure out by running a test or running a race. And then I've calculated all these paces that I should be hitting for each of the zones. And depending on the heat and humidity, it's just, you should be ready to take a hit and not feel beaten over it or frustrated because it's not your fault. It's the heat and humidity that's absolutely going to affect your performance.
Is there something that I've always been curious about is, especially when we get to like August, sort of dog days of summer in North America, it's like, is there such thing as too hot? Can you give me an excuse for not going out to run when it's the hottest day of the summer?
But Michael, I can give you alternatives if you can't go out to run. No,
Coach Katelyn gets me again. Yeah.
Exactly. Too hot. I mean, of course, this is going to, have to do with your perception and everything. But if the RRCA and there are a bunch of running organizations that have done the studies, they've put in the time, and they say that like 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit to be exact, which is about 37 degrees Celsius. It's too hot, and that is hot. And accompanied with about 70 to 80% humidity. Like that's when you're saying, okay, you've got this heat, because you have the people who say, but it's a dry heat. And they're right. The dry heat does make a difference. And That is true, because when you add in the humidity factor, you have to think about your sweat rate. Like, you're not able, like, if the air is full of moisture, I'm not a scientist, but I've read a lot about it. And if the air is full of moisture, you can't efficiently sweat the way you want to, because your sweat is just stuck to you and you're completely soaked, and your clothes, even if they're moisture wicking, amazing, top of the line running clothes, they're not going to dry, because the humidity is there. And so you're not going to kind of get that moisture off of your skin. And so it makes it tougher for you to sweat and for your core body temperature to lower, as I understand it. So that's why I think the humidity adds even more of a challenge to running. So I would say 70-80% humidity with that 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Michael, you have an excuse to say, I'm staying in.
Yeah, I'm a TMI, but I'm a sweater. And like, I've always kind of wondered if like being a big sweater is a good thing or a bad thing, or kind of like a combination of both. Cause like, I know that sweating is a natural response and a defense mechanism and a good thing. And it's kind of like one of the things that makes humans, right? It allows us to endure and become endurance athletes. But I also kind of wonder if sometimes when I'm sweating a lot, if it's just like sending this horrible, like psychosomatic response, like where I'm like, like, this is dangerous. You're dying right now. Stop what you're doing. Slow down. And I fear heat in any racing situation, and I'll drag myself through heat in a long run, but it's not pretty. And I've actually always been interested in like, what my sweat rate is and doing sort of the science of it. Alex, have you ever done any of that? Like, have you ever done the figuring out what your sweat rate is, gone to a lab, anything like that?
I never have, no. And I had the opportunity for it because we went through this exercise physiology lab when I was in university and tested a bunch of metrics, but never sweat. Maybe it's because we live in Canada and that 37 degrees Celsius that Katelyn describes, we barely ever hit here. Right. I'd say right here, you hit it maybe 2 or 3 times a summer in the middle of an afternoon. So we're probably not even scratching that surface, I suppose. But I don't know. I'm not that much of a sweater. I actually enjoy the heat, but I wonder, and this is a question for the scientists, how much of your own ability to take in heat has to do with your adaptation, even on a month-to-month basis. And this is an anecdotal question in theory, because I have this vendetta against one race here in Canada. Okay. It's the Ottawa race weekend 10K. Yeah. I've only done it twice, 2015 and 2022. Both times I bonked horribly in a 10K, which is, you don't bonk in a 10K that easily. What happened both times was that it was 26 degrees Celsius outside, which for Americans and especially Costa Ricans is not that warm. But for a Canadian who just went through a winter and hasn't felt 26 degrees in possibly 9 months, it's sweltering.
It's like the ninth ring of hell. Yeah.
Sure. Every year it's like that too, because it's in the last weekend of May and they just seem to always have hot weather. And it's been like that for me and others who've raced it in other years. People have a hard time racing there. And then a few months pass and then it's August and I'm running and I'm doing a workout or a race and it's 26 degrees and I take it like a champ because I've done that for a few months. Is that in my head? Or is that an actual physiological adaptation that you undergo in such a short time span? I don't even know if that's possible.
Has there been any research on that? Like, I feel like that is a really valid question. It's something I think anecdotally, I experience it. Particularly, I was just talking about this the other day, running the Chicago Marathon in the fall, which means that I'm going to have to train. My peak of my training will sort of fall in around like August, right? I'll be really ramping up in August, doing very hard workouts, lots of volume, lots of running, which just means it's running in the heat's going to be inescapable for me. And I always find by the time I get to that place, I'm starting to get, my joke is just as I'm starting to get used to the heat, it starts to cool down in September. So I don't know if that is, if there is sort of like is this a psychological effect or a physiological adaptation? That's a really good question.
And I wonder because also anecdotally here, we have a lot of races in Costa Rica, a lot of ultras, and they're all hot. Almost all of them are hot. Like you're going to find very few that are going to be up in the mountains, and there are a few, but most of them are hot at some point. Even Moon Run, which is in the cloud forest, is hot because once we get there, there's not much elevation there. So there have been instances where when the North Face Challenge races, we used to do one here in Rincon de la Vieja, and we still do the race, but it's not a North Face Challenge anymore. And I remember with those races, they used to bring some elite runners, sponsored runners from the States, and perhaps from other places around the world as well. I don't remember, but it was from the States, and they would come and we would run Rincon de la Vieja. And I remember, we would, and they would bonk horribly, and where, we live there all the time. We train there. We train in the heat. We're in the heat constantly. We're the locals. And the locals were doing a great job in these races. And, people who obviously had probably a much higher fitness level than we did had a lot of trouble with the races. And I'm absolutely sure it was because of the heat and humidity and not being accustomed to running in that heat and humidity, because it definitely wasn't the fitness levels. They were obviously much better professional runners than we were there, but we just had an easier time with the heat. So I do think there's got to be something there. There's got to be something where you get used to it if you're constantly training in it, and if not.
So to give you the opportunity to speak to those poor North Face Endurance Challenge athletes, those North Face sponsored athletes that they flew in all those years ago, to turn to them and say, here are my tips for how you can beat the heat. What would you like? Well, yeah, like what are some like tried and true methods for either managing the heat, training in the heat, and just having success, because it's unavoidable. We all have to run in the heat at some point.
I mean, I think most importantly, we need to try to stay hydrated. I mean, that's number one. So your day-to-day hydration throughout the day, not even thinking about training. When you're just in the heat in general, you need to keep your hydration up. So when you do train, you're not in a dehydrated state, that you're already, starting out hydrated. What I do when I train for my runs here is, well, since I'm a trail runner, we're used to using hydration packs. So I just make sure that I'm, loaded up with that. I know a lot of road runners probably don't enjoy using hydration packs, but, handheld bottles or waist packs or anything that you can have your hydration in, water, sports drinks with electrolytes. That's what I would say. I'm also like Michael, and I'm a very heavy sweater when I'm running. And so I need to get my electrolytes in there as well. So I always have something that also has electrolytes in it. When you're planning your longer runs or even short but intense runs, I would try to do like a loop where you can always go back and refill. So you've got, a cooler in the back of your trunk or a little cooler outside of the car that you can just kind of run by and grab, bottles of water, bags of water, whatever you have there, you can refill. If that's not an option, think about places where there are places you could jump in and run and buy something like a bottle of Gatorade when you're on the run. Like, you've really got to plan out these runs so you stay hydrated. And I just think that that's the most important thing, because that's where people will start bonking, getting dehydrated. So that's number one. That's the number one tip I have.
All right. Finally, I mean, let's do our public service message here. Like, have either of you ever had a major issue, like physical issue in heat, like a scary moment? And if so, or if not, like it's like there's pushing hard, and then there's like danger of collapse and ending up in the hospital. Like, how do we stay away from doing that?
I have an experiential story. I still don't have the solution for it.
Okay.
I was in Montreal visiting with my girlfriend, and it was a heat wave. This was 3 years ago, and every day it would go up to 35 degrees. So I resorted to running in the mornings. Mm-hmm. And the morning runs were fine, 18, 19 degrees Celsius, very comfortable actually. Break a sweat near the end. One morning I ran a 10-miler, an easy 10-miler. Went home, had breakfast. We drove into the city. We spent all day in the city going to restaurants, walking around. We got some ice cream. We had a really good time. Drove back to our Airbnb, went to a dinner place. I ordered hot wings. When I hear myself, this is a terrible strategy for a good healthy day. Okay. So I had the hot wings, finished them, and then went straight into heat stroke. I saw black dots and almost lost consciousness. I had to do the thing where you put your head between your knees and ice on your neck and drink a lot of water. It was a heat stroke. So delayed onset, but I think what I learned from it was that sometimes you can finish a hot run feeling fine, but those hours after the run are important for your recovery. You need to keep drinking water, which I hadn't done. Maybe stay away from the hot wings. I don't know. And otherwise, just be conscious that the run doesn't end when the run ends, when it's warm. So I've been able to stave off future heat strokes that way, but it was scary. I mean, it's not that I was putting in higher mileage than usual, not running harder than usual, but I hadn't adjusted for the heat. So I'm trying to be more conscious of that now.
So and I think even you made a really good decision by, picking the coolest time of the day to run. You're going to say, because that's another really important thing when you're training through the summer months. Think about early morning or think about in the evening when the sun's down. So at least one of those factors aren't there. So to think that you went to all the trouble to do that and still felt and still had that issue in the evening. I mean, you are making the right decisions there. So you really just have to, like you said, hydrate after as well. Super important, and prepare for that. And I'm sure that you had on, a light, loose clothing, you prepared for it and everything. Anything can happen, but you've got to make sure you get all those factors in there. So when you did experience the heat stroke, what did you do, like ice on the back of the neck? Like what did you do to cool down your body?
Yeah, ice on the back of the neck, sipping water as much as I could.
Yep.
Left 2 hot wings in the plate and sat down, head between the knees, just trying to cool myself off as much as I could. Mm.
Yeah, I guess it's like bad news when your skin is dry and hot and you're feeling super dehydrated and seeing sort of the black spots or white spots. Bad sign, very bad sign. It's like, I think our bodies are like, it's like when you take a roast out of the oven after a couple of hours and you leave the heat thermometer in and the temperature actually keeps going up for like 10 minutes after you take it out of the oven because of like the pressure and the intensity of that heat coming out of the roast. We're like roasting ourselves when we're running. Anyway, okay, so we'll share our sweaty war stories on the run. I'm sure at some point in July and August as we're suffering through all of this, and then Katelyn will roll her eyes at us because she's in a perpetual state of heat exhaustion. All right, we'll wrap things up for this episode. If you do not follow what we are doing on social media, obviously do that. Our colleague, teammate Jesse Carveth, and myself have both joined Alex Cyr in the real game a little bit. We're starting to pump out these little short form vertical videos. Jesse and I are focusing mostly on kind of like what's important to know in the running world on a day-to-day basis. Actually, just before jumping on this pod recording, I cranked one out where I was talking about why athletes getting paid for winning a gold medal in the Olympics might change the Olympic movement forever and what the ramifications will be of that. And I'm sure we've got a lot to talk about. There's all kinds of different things happening right now. So keep an eye on that. Follow our Instagram and newsletter. We're moving to 5 days a week. We're cranking out the hits. We've reformatted a little bit. Looks nice and elegant, nice and clean, easy to read. Yeah, it's really nice. And Katelyn just sent one out today. So subscribe to our newsletter. You can go to our site, marathonhandbook.com, to subscribe to the newsletter. And YouTube. YouTube is a must. Alex Cyr is weaving incredible shoe review yarns. He's nailing it every single week. What was this week's? What's the upcoming video? What's the one you got in the hopper right now?
It's the New Balance Fuel Cell Super Comp Elite V4. It's a song in my head because it's the longest shoe name I've ever heard. Coming out on Sunday. So the New Balance Super Shoe that looks like a Transformer shoe, and that I've gotten to wear quite a bit at this point.
I've seen a draft of this video, and it's awesome. So subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you'll get that. served up to you every week and all kinds of other stuff, including a video version of our podcast, which you can find on YouTube. Subscribe to our podcast if you don't already, and give us a 5-star review. It would help us out a lot with what we're trying to grow. And thanks so much for listening.